Hello, and welcome to the fifth episode of Construction Waves, the Financial Chair series, where we explore the financial aspects of the construction industry and sit down with the leaders shaping its future. I'm Danielle Keneally, a journalist at Construction Wave, and in today's episode, we have the pleasure of speaking with Premier Modular's Chief Executive Officer, David Harris, and Chief Financial Officer, Craig Malloy. We'll be discussing the evolution of modular construction, the financial strategies driving Premier Modular's success, and how the industry is tackling key challenges like sustainability, technological integration, and scaling up production. David, Craig, thanks for joining me.
No problem, nice to be here.
To start, could you introduce yourselves, share your backgrounds, and explain your roles at Premier Modular? What first drew you to the modular construction industry, and how do you see it transforming the UK construction landscape?
So, David Harris, I'm Chief Executive Officer of Premier Modular Group, made up really of three companies, should I say, Premier Modular Limited, Premier Modular BV, which is our European business, and Net Zero Buildings. I've actually been in the modular industry now for 26 years, the last 16 years with Premier Modular. Sort of prior to that, I was 10 years in the automotive industry doing various jobs and actually ended up as a lean manufacturing specialist. And I think that's probably really the trigger of what drew me into the industry in the first place, that I was used to sort of very much lean manufacturing, cost down focus, and saw construction industry as, in some ways, obviously an essential industry, but a slightly archaic industry where I felt I could have quite a significant impact. So my initial role within the industry sort of 25 years ago was as manufacturing director, trying to bring efficiencies to construction process and actually making these factories into manufacturing facilities rather than building sites in a shed. So that's kind of what brought me to it. I think perhaps after Craig's introduced himself, I can talk about why or how I see it transforming the sector.
Craig Malloy, Chief Financial Officer, Premier Modular Group. I've been with the business 17 months. My kind of history is I started out life in automotive, working through finance, different areas of finance. And then I came into infrastructure, really. I worked in road and rail infrastructure for a number of years, and then more recently was more into manufacturing businesses. And then kind of the last 5 years really been more in the kind of modular site accommodation industry, and the opportunity to join Premier came up about a couple of years ago, and I, to be honest, jumped at the chance. I think modular buildings and what Premier does has got a massive growth potential in the current climate of where we are in the country, with the shortage of labour and getting materials and things like that. So yeah, I came and joined David and his team, and it's been nothing but positive since joining 17 months ago, with a lot to go on, and yeah, it's been a real highlight for the last few months.
Your sort of second part of your question around how it may transform the construction landscape or the construction sector. I think in a lot of different ways. I mean, construction itself is obviously a critical, essential role in society that, particularly in the UK, you've got almost a crumbling infrastructure in many ways. What was world leading is now crumbling, whether that be education, healthcare, military accommodation, airports, across the piece really. So there's a huge problem ahead of us as a country. I said in my sort of opening that I think the construction sector itself in some ways is a little bit archaic. And perhaps to bring that alive, in my early days, when I first joined the industry, a lot of government studies were done around how much of the pounds spent is actually spent on product in the construction industry. And a lot of studies showed that it was often only between 25 and 40 pence per pound that was actually on the product itself. And I think that says a lot about the way that the industry contracts with different individual partners within the team, the way it contracts in terms of partnership or not in terms of relationship, but thirdly, the amount of different parties that are involved in coming up with a construction solution and the inefficiency within the whole process. So I think modular has a huge part to play in changing the sector. Don't get me wrong, it's not fit for all purposes. Obviously, there's many forms of construction, but modular has the ability to help in many, many areas, in terms of excuse me, in terms of, improving client return on investment through cost certainty of a project. Because it's a manufactured product, we can be extremely clear about what the cost outcome will be of a project when we first design it through sort of digital processes, whether it's better environmental or less embodied carbon in the product, better environmental performance because it's manufactured, there's no air gaps in the product, whether it's the efficiency that we manufacture through the factory with skilled and semi-skilled labour, and people are coming to one site to do their work. It's safer, it's better quality, and it's done a lot faster. So huge potential to transform the industry once the modular industry can scale up enough to be able to really service all the opportunities that sit there.
Great, thanks for that. Well, modular construction has gained increasing attention as a solution to the UK's housing shortage, and it's aimed to build that 1.5 million homes by 2029, as well as a way to address issues such as rising construction costs and labour shortages. One analyst predicted the construction industry is shrinking at a rapid rate, with potentially 500,000 workers estimated to have left the sector in the 10 years to 2027. But modular construction has presented a viable solution to fill the gap and is seeing significant growth as a consequence. From your perspective, what do you think it is driving growth in the sector? What factors are playing the biggest role in making modular an attractive option, and how is Premier Modular positioning itself to capitalise on these trends?
Yeah, I think there's a large number of drivers there, and I think it's changed dramatically over the 25 years I've been in the industry in terms of accepting these better and better solutions that are manufactured. I think if you go back to the labour workforce, it's certainly not seen as a sexy place to work, the construction industry, when people are leaving school. And I think that's a fundamental issue, that people don't want to be seen working in a muddy field. And obviously modular offers a very different route to that. Just to give you an example, it's from probably the best example I could give you was in the COVID period, when obviously there was a real problem. Nobody had any work at the time. We were absolutely flat out because we were building a Nightingale hospital, we built all the COVID test stations, and we advertised very, very strongly, went on TV at the time to actually tell people, come and work for us, we will retrain you. And we took on probably 100 people within 2 weeks, and I actually managed to retrain a lot of those people into some of the more basic skills that we need in modular factory. Yes, they have to then develop further, but by having consistent work for people in a factory, you can train far more easily, and they're working in a far better environment than they would, and a more consistent environment than they would be traveling to different parts of the country every day, working outside. So I think from a labour perspective, that's one of the key things. I think from a client perspective, it's very much about return on investment, time, quality, sustainability, and making sure they've got the circularity of their product. Whether it doesn't, not necessarily net zero, but having a better carbon performance in what they're wanting to buy or have on their estates. So in terms of Premier, we very much are position ourselves as we hope, one of the most sustainable solutions, and trying to offer full circularity to our clients. We position ourselves as the most premiumized solution in the UK. So trying to provide products that are bespoke, customized to a client's needs, whether that be permanent buildings, semi-permanent, or a more temporary solution to suit whatever the requirement is, and provide ultimate flexibility to a client on their estate of what they may do with the future of their estate. Because buying or building a bricks and mortar solution in today's society is becoming a little bit of a dangerous decision, because society is moving so quickly. What will be needed in 6-7 years time, it's actually quite hard to determine, and clients are understanding that future proofing, that flexibility that modular can offer, could really give them opportunities on their own estates for the future.
Yeah, sure. Well, the UK modular market is estimated at £13.6 billion with an expected 2.6% growth rate that looks set to be worth £16.6 billion by next year. It does see significant investment, with an advantage of off-site manufacturing being, as you've mentioned, the speed of delivery. And it is often cited that as a modern method of construction build times can be reduced by up to 50%. And for firms like your own, controlling costs while meeting ambitious deadlines is crucial.
I mean, it is often referred to as modern methods of construction, but Premier itself has been around since 1956. We're celebrating 70th birthday this year. So I'm not sure that's really true. I think over that period, there's been massive change in the products that are produced. I think that is a key change. And obviously, the industry is only as good as the worst building that's produced, which is why working with an industry association and some of us to support some of the smaller players is also very important, because we need to ensure technical standards are met across the whole industry so that the reputation of the industry only goes in one direction, to improve.
Well, looking at your recent financial results, they do show stable revenues of more than £100 million, with growth specifically in the rental market, despite a slight drop in profits. How significant is this shift towards rental revenue, and do you anticipate it becoming a large portion of your business moving forward? How do you project it will impact future financial outcomes for the company, both in terms of short-term profitability and long-term sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, our profitability has grown in the 16 years I've been here. It's grown every single year bar one, where it just slightly flattened off. And again, we expect quite a significant increase in our current financial year again. We want to service our clients with whatever solution is the right solution for their needs. We believe a semi-permanent or temporary solution is actually often a far better solution for a client. So we see a natural progression of our rental business as a proportion of what we're providing, because it gives our clients ultimate flexibility in the future. So we've put in place financial ability to deliver that, because obviously it costs us a lot of money in terms of capital to be able to do that for our clients. And that's the way Craig and the finance team have been working in terms of ensuring we are able to support our clients in that way. But we certainly see our rental business probably ending up at about 75% of our total by 2030 or thereabouts. It's currently maybe 55 to 56% of the business. So yeah, we do see a continued shift there.
Kevin's right. The growth for us is definitely in rental, and I think that suits the client base as well in terms of what we currently have. And I think the more we focus on our rental business, the better, to be honest, for the clients as well.
Definitely. How does your financial performance then compare to broader trends in the modular construction industry, especially given this shift in focus to rental? What further strategies are you employing to improve profitability?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of questions in there, I think. Firstly, just to share a bit of history in Premier, a number of years ago, we made a decision to sell off our cabin fleet, which are the single units, deliberately, to become the only modular specialist provider in the UK, whether that be rental or permanent. So we made that decision. That strategically enabled us to become far more efficient with how we managed our products, because we managed to come to one core depot rather than having products all over the country. We really have four, I think, key pillars in the business, strategic pillars that are our focus. We heavily invest in people, whether that be training for senior people, whether it be apprenticeships. We're a large provider in the area. Secondly, we want to be, and believe we are, a leader in sustainability. So we fundamentally want to help our clients go on that improved sustainability journey. We're providing a space, a building that they're using, but we want to take them on the journey. So it's not just what we do in our own facilities. We can help people all across the UK and in Northern Europe to be more sustainable. So that's a big focus for us. Thirdly, very much around efficiency. So perhaps where I started the whole conversation 15 minutes ago, really believe that driving efficiency through the business, whether it be manufacture, site construction, design, all these areas can only, one, give better cost certainty, and secondly, give cost reduction that we can then pass through to our clients while still remaining profitable. And fourthly, keeping customers absolutely essential of everybody's mind. So we talk about customer centricity a lot through the business, and trying to make people realise that it's customers that pay their wages in reality. So keeping the customer at the forefront hopefully drives a lot of the other behaviours that we're looking for within the business. The second part of the question, which was how we compare to others in the industry. So we are structured slightly differently because of that modular specialism. There are a number of our competitors who are both rental and sale. Equally, there's a lot of people are sale only. So I think obviously from a financial strength point of view, being both rental and sale gives us a very strong financial position, which Craig might want to comment on. With obviously a lot of visibility on longer term cash flows, so it allows us hopefully to have good supply chain partners, and I hope give confidence to the employees that there's longevity to the business. But being at the premium end of the market, I think perhaps with one or two others in the industry, our pricing and profitability is strong because we're providing absolutely the best products out to our clients. So that's kind of where we position and how we see that profitability.
I mean, I think the mix of the permanent business or the sales business and the rental business helps our cash flow tremendously. Obviously, we get the rentals, which tend to be 2 years plus, especially with extensions. That gives us that ongoing cash. And obviously, we have the permanent businesses. They come in that they can be quite lumpy at times, but it gives you that ability to get cash payments and also fill up our factory. Manufacturing wise, it kind of spreads the work, which is obviously helps the business. And obviously that's kind of how we work, making sure that we've got the factory full and we're managing our cash position closely, so we've got enough to invest back in the business and obviously produce more units.
And in terms of financial strategies?
We've got quite a few things. We obviously do a lot of internal projects to look at efficiencies. We have a number of internal projects that we're working on at the moment. We do that quite well, and obviously we monitor and manage KPIs quite well in the business. Obviously, every month we go through a number of key performance metrics that obviously we manage closely. And we're also on an interesting journey at the moment through technology. We just basically put a new ERP system in the business, which will obviously eventually bring some key efficiency savings to the business and also help us move forward with technology and AI, which we'll then use to help manage the business and obviously get better visibility of how we're performing in all key areas, which will help give us a real platform for growth, which is what we're looking for.
Certainly, and you've also expanded into Northern Europe, particularly the Dutch market, which has continued to grow its pipeline. How critical is European expansion to your strategy, and what impact does entering new markets have on your capital allocation and long-term revenue projections and margins?
Yeah, I mean, we entered the market a couple of years ago, and I think it is very much important to our longer term strategy. It has little impact in the near term, but we entered the market with a vision that we can replicate our rental business in the UK in certain territories in Northern Europe. And the reason being, they have exactly the same needs for high quality, premiumized solutions. There's probably even less people in those territories that can provide the facilities that we do. So yes, it might take time to gain the real momentum we want, but we believe that the need is there. So yeah, we're focused particularly in the Netherlands, parts of Belgium and northern Germany. Specifically, that's easy to service from Rotterdam, because obviously we can take a unit from our factory, which isn't very far from Hull Docks, across to Rotterdam for not a lot more money than going to London. So it's not a bad route in for us. Yes, if I look 5 year hence, we assume we will have a reasonable sized fleet there, but it's not fundamental in our business plan. It becomes much more fundamental beyond 5 years, but we're having some good success. We're currently putting quite a large building in for one of our clients in Amsterdam to support the build of a big data center. That'll be on hire for at least 3 years there. And we've got some really great stuff in the municipalities over there, providing sort of high quality facilities for local communities in those areas, whether it be changing rooms, shower areas, things like that. So I think the product's been really well received so far, but a long way to go.
Yeah, sure. As you mentioned, they do face the same challenges, with the sector increasingly seen as a solution to many of those. But achieving profitability is not without its hurdles. And while yourselves at Premier Modular have managed to navigate these challenges through diversification and operational strategies, and there are success stories, there are also several high-profile insolvencies and rescues and off-site manufacturing divisions being closed. How does the company balance the financial demands of upfront investments such as factories and materials with maintaining long-term profitability? How do you approach investments like your new £15 million manufacturing facility, for example?
I'll let Craig answer most of this, but I will just touch on something at the start. The most fundamental difference is what I tried to draw out in the last question you raised, is that the companies that are rental focused with a strong sales business as well are in a far better financial position. Those that have, as you say, high profile casualties have typically been sales only, and particularly in the residential sector, which is a much more low cost area. So we do some residential, particularly for military and uh, sort of certain social areas in the UK, but our primary focus is commercial buildings and infrastructure, where they are more technically challenging products which suit our type of skill set more. But perhaps Craig can touch on, particularly around the
I
capex
touched on some of it.
structure.
I touched on it earlier. Obviously, the mix of rental versus sales of units is obviously important for us. And I think obviously, certainly with the permanent buildings, we've got a very good strategy around what kind of projects we want to take and in which sectors and which clients we want to work with, which is also key in some of these sectors. Some of it can become very contractual very quickly in certain bigger projects. And we've obviously managed that well here. We're obviously very close to the numbers in terms of when we price jobs and making sure that we have the key metrics in place to make sure that we're getting the right margins and hitting the right efficiencies out of the projects. And we manage our cash throughout the whole life cycle of the project, which obviously stands us in good stead. But I think the key thing is how we as a business, we've got the mix of the right rental to permanent projects, stands us in good stead, and obviously avoiding the high risk projects in the permanent side, where you can get your cash tied up for a number of months, stroke years, if you have a potential issue. So I think all that's pretty much well managed within our own remit, and that's kind of why we've managed to stay away from that area and look to grow.
I'd just also say that obviously working hard, having the right financial structure is critical, because so much of our business is based on significant capex investment in terms of building a rental fleet, but also the amount of premiumization that we add to our products. So again, making sure Craig and his team have the right backers and flexibility in our finance is also fundamental to that, and that takes a lot of our time just to make sure it's in place at all times.
Correct.
I appreciate that. I want to expand on the integration of the AI and BIM technologies that you mentioned earlier, as it has revolutionized construction, enabling faster and more accurate designs. In the modular sector, and it does present quite an exciting opportunity as well to scale modular construction while reducing labour requirements and improving cost efficiency. In what ways are these tools being leveraged by the company, and what impact have they had on financial performance? Can you share an example of balancing cost and scalability and return on investment?
I mean, BIM is nothing new really, although people talk about it. I guess within the modular sector, we've had certainly a number of systems that are a big chunk of BIM for many, many years in terms of how we draw out materials, create bills of materials, tie things together. Yes, BIM takes it much further than that, but a huge amount of our permanent projects are now required to be done through BIM. So we do that. Yes, it does improve efficiencies because you're obviously tying things together for right through the life of the products, but also reducing potential errors that can be created as well. I think for us, we see other areas of AI as far more important to where we're heading. In fact, we recently had it as quite a large theme in our conference, and we had one of our team really bring it alive to all the managers in the business, and then sort of leading on to a brainstorm of, if we had AI as a teammate, what could we do with it? And it was actually tremendous what came out of it, and allowed Craig really to start to shortlist where we might see benefit. So I don't know if you wanted to touch particularly on that side of things, Craig.
Yeah, I can. So AI for us is a great opportunity for the business as a whole. We've got a few smaller examples of where AI is already helping the business in certain areas, such as accounts payable. We're now doing optical character recognition of invoices, which just means that we've basically touched us on invoices, which is just a small thing, but it's kind of heading in the right direction. We have got other thoughts of where we'd add AI to the business, which is actually tying into units and understanding the current state of our unit and how we can then use design and kind of speed the process up from design to finding the right unit and doing the minimal amount of work to then obviously be able to ship that to customer, reducing the lead times. So there's lots of opportunity in AI that we think we can tap into. I think it is quite early in our sector at the moment, and people are still playing with lots of different ideas. We've got a fairly good list that we will have for the next sort of 12 to 24 months of what we'd like to get done. So I think it will add a lot of value to the business. But yeah, it's still fairly early in the journey. But yeah, lots of positives out of AI opportunities within the business.
Can you expand on that?
We also have a lot of modular units in the site. And the configuration of them units, we could obviously, when we get an order or design, we could then identify very quickly which is the right unit to choose with the minimal amount of work. So obviously it saves on, and we can then use reusable materials as well at that point, from obviously an ESG point of view. So we can actually really make the best for all parties and and the efficiency of the unit. So I think that's a really nice step forward that would tie in how we find things on the site and actually use them in the most efficient way, which would be a real
I
step
think
forward.
once, all the management team sat there even for 40 minutes, it's incredible how many very simple opportunities sprung out that everyone could do. And a number of them we're using now through very simple tools. If you think about every time we put quotes through, we're having to almost do bid writing and things like that. So yes, you still need that skill in the business, but you can actually simplify and automate many elements of things like that quite quickly and easily, to be fair.
Sure, thanks. Linking back to my previous question, then, would you say the adoption of AI and diversification is a strategy that perhaps other modular firms could employ successfully?
I think definitely yes, but I think it's more than that. I think there's no choice if you get left behind. Part of it is moving with the times. Part of it is how do you use this for the benefit to get ahead. And there are going to be, as Craig just mentioned, one good example. There's many examples that actually could give us a competitive advantage if we use it well. And I'm sure it's the same for all our competitors as well.
Thank you. Well, I wanted to touch on the impact of the Building Safety Act on high-rise and multi-unit modular buildings. And while I realise Premier Modular isn't involved in high-rise buildings, you are involved in various sectors like healthcare and education and social housing. How do you ensure compliance with the new safety standards, such as fire safety and structural integrity, while managing the financial impact on project costs?
Building Safety Act is something that everyone in the industry has to grasp and has to deal with. And everyone talks loosely about ESG. The G governance aspect is the most fundamental. If you haven't got the governance, you haven't got anything in your business. So we've put a big effort, and Craig's been very strong in this in terms of making sure the governance side of the business is absolutely right, that we are meeting, and if you talk about the Building Safety Act particularly, it's all about competence really, and taking responsibility. So we're making sure we have a highly trained and competent design teams through the business that are qualified correctly, where we subcontract out design elements, whether it be structural design or anything else, they're through competency and demonstrable qualifications as well. So we take it extremely seriously. Compliance is everything. Obviously, after Grenfell, which was obviously such an awful disaster, but it overnight changed the industry in terms where building inspectors would have just had a look and accepted things before. It became full demonstration required. So we've invested nearly £300,000 over the last 18 months in terms of actually fire testing and proving our various systems actually comply. So it wasn't that they didn't comply, but we've had to demonstrate that they comply. And obviously, every time you change anything, you have to then go and re-verify it, because people don't like to rely on engineers' reports anymore. So it's fundamentally turned the industry upside down. I think we as a company are in a really good place with it, because we have had the funds to go and do the testing, but it certainly cost us financially nearly £300,000 to do that. I mean, if we're working in for an NHS trust or for an academy, the compliance to technical standards, whether it be the healthcare standards or the Department for Education standards, are absolutely critical. So we've got to be able to prove fundamentally that we meet everything that's necessary. And then obviously, not obviously, but when we manufacture the factory, we photograph every single stage of the process so that there are clear records. If anyone ever wants to look what was behind that wall or how was that bolted together, there's a picture of it, and you can actually trace it right back to that action in the factory. And I think that's is governance at its best. It really demonstrates clearly all the way through the project what's actually been done.
Governance, obviously, from a finance background, is obviously one of our paramount kind of jobs. Brought a little bit more rigor to some of the things we had, and obviously challenged a few things, which is good from a business point of view. And then we obviously regularly have governance committee meetings, which obviously myself and David are involved in, where we get quite a few members of the people around the team and around the business involved, and actually work together on specific subject matters, or obviously challenge each other to make sure that we're covering each other off, whether that be in health and safety, whether that be in regulation, or whether it be in, you know, an audit kind of finance area. We do a lot of internal audits ourselves, clearly across, you know, from health and safety, myself, the factory floor quite regularly, but also in terms of, you know, financial things where we want somebody else to take a look and challenge what we do the process.
Thanks. Well, I did want to move on to sustainability, as it is a major priority across the construction sector, and modular construction. It does offer significant potential to contribute to the UK's net zero goals as a more sustainable alternative to traditional methods. Given Premier Modular's net zero goals, what financial investments are being made to ensure sustainability in operations? How do you address emissions, energy efficiency in both the production and the final product? And are there measurable benefits such as government incentives or green loans that you take advantage of?
Being a leader in sustainability is one of our key operational pillars in the business, and it's hugely important to us. And I do think that we really are one of the leaders in the industry for anything around sustainability. In terms of our operations, I think we have a very clear plan to be net zero operationally by 2040, and we have trigger points along that journey at 2030 and 2035. And we've made huge strides, I think. You know, we've been zero waste to landfill for, I think, 5 years now. We have a huge effort around material recycling, segregation, converting materials into energy. And we invested maybe 18 months or 2 years ago in full solar panels across our factories as well to support our energy use within the factories. So I think we're a long way down the route ourselves, but I think our big focus still remains with our clients, and actually, because we're producing more footprint than we have every month, so we're sending it somewhere else in the UK or Northern Europe. So if we can have impact on those buildings, we're having a much more dramatic effect than we are just on our own premises. So it kind of goes against a little bit against the thing, but if we can do both, we have dramatic impact. So we've developed, first and foremost, a carbon calculator that goes out on every project that we do, where we allow the client to understand that if they take different sustainable technologies, what they can do to their own carbon footprint in that building. And we're seeing a reasonable take up now from clients understanding that actually they should be considering whether it be rainwater harvesting or waterless urinals or AI sockets, or there's a number of different tools that actually bring energy use massively down. Because you can imagine on a lot of sites, it's not like in your home where you probably do turn things off because you're paying the bill. A lot of these buildings, people aren't paying the bills, so they just leave air conditioning units on, they leave heaters on overnight, even though the windows are open and things like that. And it's a you can really put technology into to get this energy down quite easily, the wasted energy. So that's a huge focus for us, really. And we have a whole division within our business set up to support these client options, because we see it becoming more and more important on every building that we send out from here. A lot of the funding that we have through the banking community we are seen as very ESG friendly, particularly because of the circularity of modular, which allows us, I think, get better access to funding, which allows us to then get the capital we need to grow the business. So there is a route, but it's not really through government loans.
Thank you. While modular construction is seen as an efficient and innovative solution, there is still some skepticism around durability and aesthetic appeal when compared to traditional methods. How do you address this, and do you think perceptions are shifting towards greater acceptance of off-site manufacturing?
As I said at the start, I've been in the industry 26 years, and 26 years ago I would 100% have agreed with your sort of comments there, and probably rightly so back then, that they were less bespoke, high quality buildings out there, although there were still some that had been there a long time. Um, and I think the industry's developed massively. And going back to the governance point, that the compliance issues are critical, but even pre-Grenfell, compliance to regulations was a bigger and bigger issue, and quality standards. So I think there's a huge amount of demonstrable high quality product out there, and there has been for quite a lot of years now. The other big change is I think most universities putting people through on any construction type course have off-site manufacture or modern methods of construction, or any whatever you might want to acronym you might want to use, very much as part of the course. So you've got a whole workforce now that you didn't have 25 years ago, who actually understand the basics of it and understand it is just a complete alternative route to a traditional build. So our modular buildings are a steel frame in segments. When they're put together, they're a steel frame. There is no difference in reality to a traditional steel frame going up on site. It's just far more efficient and reusable. So I think there is still some perceptions like that, but it's nothing like it was years ago. And that's probably why the growth is being fueled so much more now, that people are understanding it's a very viable alternative.
Of course, and just to give you a little bit more context with regards to that question, Arcadis reported that before the pandemic, modular construction was seen as cheap and uninspired, but quickly became essential for delivering healthcare facilities and affordable housing at a quicker rate during the pandemic itself. And this led to a shift for flexible design and sustainable, safer building practices by prefabricating components in advance.
I would massively counter it with the practicalities of what's out there. 20 years ago, we were building 7-story apartment blocks that looked exactly like the traditional apartment block next to it, and they're still there today. So my son lives in one of them. There was perception on certain elements of it. I was thinking of a few live examples actually that were built many, many years ago. So I remember doing a scheme for UCL in London. It was a traditional 5-story building opposite St Pancras Station, and they needed a 2-story extension on the top. So we built that modular and put it on top, and it's still there today. It looks absolutely fabulous. And I can think of loads of examples. In my previous company, built 450 McDonald's restaurants that are all still stood. They all still look fantastic. So I take Arcadis's point, but that's a very narrow view on the reality.
And Craig, as somebody who's recently joined the sector, has your opinion changed of modular construction?
It has changed actually. I was site accommodation before, so a much lower kind of product that's mainly just used for obviously on the guys on the site. So yeah, when I joined Modular and saw how they were actually built and obviously how well they look on site, especially with the cladding and things, they look just like any other building. You would never know unless you really knew your kind of stuff, whether it was a modular building or actually if somebody had built it through bricks. So yeah, I massively changed my opinion of modular building. But yeah, they look fantastic. We spend a lot of time on the shop floor, so yeah, they are crafted through the process. And like you say, I think the fact we're a premium product, I think if you asked our client base, they see it as a premium product, and the experience they get from the office is just like you would get in any normal office. We work in, as you would imagine, a modular building here today, so you can't tell the difference between that and an office that would be built in the traditional method.
Lastly, with Premier Modular, as you mentioned, celebrating 70 years as a key player in the sector with an expanding international presence. What are your projections, say, for the next 5 to 10 years? How do you see the key drivers and risks, such as demand, labour shortages, sustainability pressures, and also the cycles of growth and contraction in modular construction? How do you see those shaping the industry and your growth strategy in particular? How you scale profitability as the industry matures?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can't crystal ball totally into the future, but I think I firmly believe that the UK or UK PLC has a real problem, that infrastructure is crumbling. It really is an issue, and therefore I think it's apolitical. So regardless of which political party is in power over the next 10 years, I think they have a fundamental issue that they have got to replace a significant amount of crumbling infrastructure. Now, whether it's just old or whether it's actually got a problem, like a rack problem that was obviously huge in the press a couple of years ago, whether that's education, healthcare, Ministry of Defence, I mean, it's a falling apart, the estate. It's the airport expansion that it is, railways, it's roads, it's everywhere. So I think there's a fundamental problem. Now, whether the government wants to fund all that through CapEx or not doesn't totally matter to Premier, because I think the opportunities are huge either way around. If they want to spend a huge amount of capital, we can provide more and more through a permanent modular solution to them. The shrinking workforce in the construction sector is going to drive people towards modular, and I think the more and more demonstrable high quality buildings will just bring more work to us. I think if they decide to shrink CapEx slightly, which I think it would be better for us as a business, is that we will offer semi-permanent solutions to them that we will rent and give them that ultimate flexibility to move them elsewhere on the estate or send them back or reconfigure them. So either way around, I hope Craig agrees, but I think we feel really, really confident the next 10 years provides massive opportunity for the business as long as we keep positioning ourselves at the premium end, which is what we're all about.
Yeah, it's really, really well placed to obviously build its platform and grow. Obviously, we've got new systems in place. We've got lots of exciting opportunities coming our way. I think it's obviously down for the management team now to manage that through and obviously get the best results it can for the business. But yeah, I think we're really well placed to continue our growth journey and keep delivering for us customers. I think that's where we are.
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd add is as our business is growing quite strongly and the rental business is growing as well, obviously we should appeal more and more to funders who want a steady cash flow, sort of infrastructure type investor. And I think that will bring benefit in longer term funding for us. It'll bring benefit in terms of possibly cheaper funding for us. So again, you can see a lot of opportunity for the business to be in an even better position as we get more scale. I mean, our 5-year plan, we expect to double our profitability by 5 years. We've done that roughly over the last 5 years. So we're not to grow so quickly that we trip over. We're trying to do it in a reasonably steady manner, but I think there's huge opportunity in front of us, and it's being prepared to walk away from the wrong contracts as well as taking the right ones. And we're not afraid to walk away from projects, and we see our competitors pick some of them up, but we would not have contracted on those terms. So you've got to protect the business and manage your risk. And I think we're very, very focused on that from a governance perspective.
That's fantastic to hear that you'll be looking to double your profits by 2031. What about your revenue?
We'll probably increase revenue by 50 or 60%, but we will, I believe, double our profit.
Amazing. Well, David, Craig, thank you for your time today and for sharing your insights into the industry, its challenges and opportunities, and also the progress at Premier Modular. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing about your journey and your future plans. Thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to catch the next episode of the Financial Chair series, where we'll continue to explore the financial dynamics of the construction industry and hear from more leaders driving change. Thanks.
Cheers.
Thank you.